In this video essay, I want to lay out the 5 proofs that Thomas of Aquinas wrote in his Summa Theologiae, the summary of theology, for the existence of God. Now, to understand the position of this work, and more importantly the position of these particular arguments, there are a few concepts you have to understand first in order to correctly place and interpret this line of thinking. Let's start off by stating that this is not necessarily and exclusively an argument for the Christian religion, in particular Roman Catholicism and/or the Eastern Orthodox churches. Indeed, these arguments belong to what we call knowledge of natural theology, and might as well be used by a Muslim, a pagan philosopher, or a Christian from any denomination for that matter, to prove and establish the existence of God. This is why Aquinas builds upon the likes of Aristotle with these arguments, but also derived philosophical ideas from Islamic thinkers of the time such as Averroes, whose notes and comments were often present in the Latin translations of the texts of Aristotle that he received after the conquest of Toledo and Sicily. Therefore, it wouldn't be exactly correct to call these arguments Christian. The Catholic Church, for example, also teaches that any human being with rational capacities can get to know God in this natural sense. That is, to know of his existence and his attributes, such as simplicity, perfection, beauty, goodness, truth, and omnipotence. Every human is also born with the a priori rational structures and faculties that automatically facilitate the metaphysical axioms that are necessary to come to this natural knowledge of God. These axioms are shared realities such as the notion of cause and effect, the notion of the world not being an illusion, but a shared and experienced world, that is intelligible and that it can be known in the first place, that everything happens for a reason. Without these two, both natural knowledge and the intelligibility of creation, which together constitute the human ratio or reason, the other, fides or faith, is not possible entirely. What then is faith? Because if we understand what faith encompasses and what reason does and cannot, we will also understand what the limits of these arguments of Aquinas are in terms of human purpose, or in other and perhaps even better terms, where and what these arguments on their own cannot lead to. What faith is then depends on the denomination, of course. But since we're dealing with Aquinas here, let's take the definition of faith as opposed to reason and natural knowledge from the Catholic teachings. Faith is that which is necessary in order to know God fully and supernaturally, to be in full communion with Him, which comes to us by grace as a gift, by the mystery of Christ His sacrifice, and through God's revelation throughout the Holy Spirit and Holy Tradition. The supernatural attributes of God can also be attained through this same faith. Knowledge of His Trinitarian unity, His full divine providence, His eternal judgment, the very participation in this being of God. All these can be acquired in the same way that our reason can acquire natural knowledge about God. Like John Paul II wrote in his encyclical of 1998, Fides et Ratio, faith and reason. These two principles must act like two wings on a bird. Both are used and necessary to propel a bird forward, to guide the eros of the human spirit towards God, both in terms of natural knowledge and participation in His inner life. The final metaphor should help you fully grasp these concepts. Imagine being able to see the sun. You know of its existence by sensing and reasoning that it's there. You may acquire all sorts of data about it, its temperature, what it consists of, how old it is, how it reacts to other things, but you do not know the full meaning of it. You do not know why it's there, or what it means to be the sun, to fully participate in it. It is not within this latter, but within the first realm, the one of natural knowledge, that Aquinas draws out these 5 arguments or proofs for the existence of God. Now that we have the framework in which these arguments take place, let's examine them, called the 5 ways, one by one. The first way, or prima via, is ex parte motus, from motion or change. It is a close copy of Aristotle's argument for an unmoved mover. According to Aquinas, it is evident that there are many changes around us all the time. Many things are in motion, or are potentially in motion, or subject to change. This tension between potentiality and actuality is, according to Aristotle as well, the very core of what motion means. Motion here, however, should not be narrowly understood as change in location only, in a Newtonian or physical way, speaking of things like inertia, momentum, and velocity. Motion in the Thomistic and Aristotelian way of speaking is much more than that, and it even gets metaphysical. It deals with the underlying hierarchical causes and effects of all changes that happen. Nothing with potentiality actualizes or could be actualized without any other actualized potency causing this change or motion, or causing the preconditions and therefore the potentiality to be actualized. This does, however, leave one problem open. Does this mean that there's an infinite chain of actualized potentiality? Aquinas and Aristotle say no, because something only changes from potentiality to actuality by another actualized potency. There must be a first mover that is pure actuality, because if this first mover was once potentiality, that means something must have caused it to have changed into actuality. Therefore, the first mover is actuality itself, and must have set all the other changes from potentiality into actuality in motion. There are some interesting considerations towards this argument in particular from the many viewpoints within quantum physics and radiochemistry, so if you'd like me to dive deeper into the modern implications for this nearly 2500 years old argument, let me know down in the comments and I'll make a video about it. The secunda via is ex ratione causae efficientis, the nature of efficient cause. This alludes to Aristotle's famous four causes, of which the so-called efficient cause is one. The efficient cause is explained by Aristotle to be an agent or process. It says something about the manner and source of the change we discussed above. The argument therefore follows a clear and similar structure to the first way. Nothing can be an efficient cause of itself. For there to be effects, there must be efficient causes. And for there to be causes, there must be a first efficient cause, or there would be no effects at all. Aquinas takes this even further, saying that there is an ultimate effect, and therefore an ultimate efficient cause. There are also intermediate ones, which are the steps between the ultimate efficient cause and the ultimate effect. He argues that the intermediate agents and processes are the ones that are caused by other intermediate effects, and that the intermediate effects themselves are in turn intermediate processes that lead to other intermediate effects, and so on. Think of a row of dominoes that fall one by one. The ultimate efficient cause, the first domino being thrown, resulted through intermediate efficient causes and effects, being the individual dominoes that are touched by other fallen dominoes and become the reason another domino falls after that, in the ultimate effect. The full process of all dominoes falling. The tertia via is ex possibili et necessario, from possibility and necessity. This third argument is more of a thought experiment, and follows an ancient logic often used as proof for the immortality of the soul, and in this case, God. In nature, Aquinas writes, there are many things that have the possibility to be, but could also not be. They are not necessary to exist, or to be, and could just as well not exist, and at one point will definitely not exist. In other words, everything in nature is transient. Everything that we see was once not, and things that are not can definitely come into being. These are states that Aquinas describes as being and non-being, or as existence and non-existence. However, if everything could possibly not exist, then there could potentially be a time during which nothing exists, as everything could possibly not exist. During such time there would be no existence at all, and nothing could ever come into existence because there's nothing that exists to cause this. Therefore there must be something that always exists and never ceases to exist, because if there is no such thing, existence itself would not be possible indeed. In other words, Aquinas argues that God is existence and being itself, and therefore caused all other things to exist. For the very binary of existence and non-existence to be there, it is necessary for there to be permanent existence, or it means nothing. and existence wouldn't be possible in the first place. This is not just an empirical argument, but more so a metaphysical one of opposites and forms. It aligns very well with the classical argument from Plato's Phaedo, which states that despite the fact that the body decays and dies, a person was in some form definitely alive, as we can observe. Therefore, there must have been a part of that person that is tied to the form of absolute life itself. In this case, what we call the soul. The soul therefore has to be immortal, as the very principle of being alive doesn't permit or even admits death. Forms can never become their opposite, according to Socrates. Socrates says in Phaedo, "Will not the number 3 endure annihilation or anything sooner than to be converted into an even number, while remaining 3? Life is that which is not death, and if the principle of life itself could die or stop to exist, it was never life or alive to begin with. If death is decay and degradation, then life must be an eternal form, one in which death cannot partake or participate. And if the soul of a person was ever alive, it surely wouldn't die and would therefore be immortal." This is highly abstract and metaphysical, but this same classical logic does apply to existence and being as well. Absolute existence and being does not permit to become non-existent or non-being. The quarta via is the ex gradibus, the gradation to be found in all things natural. This argument is heavily tied to the metaphysical realm of forms that we just discussed as well. Aquinas argues that in all things in the natural world there are certain gradations. There is always something more or less beautiful, more or less noble, more or less hot or cold. It therefore follows that there must be a maximum, and everything below that is a gradation or mere resemblance of the very maximum itself. There must therefore be a perfection of all things in this world from which these gradations come, as they are all dependent in cause of this perfection. Otherwise we'd have nothing to define or relate it to. Something is more or less good because we can envision a perfect goodness, or at least know that it's there. Without that perfect or absolute goodness, we could never claim that something is more or less good, or compare things in such a way. Aquinas argues that perfection in all things can be found in this one independent cause, onto which all other things in gradation are in fact dependent. That is God. The last way, the quinta via, is called ex Gubernatione Rerum, the governance of all things. Aquinas argues that there is an intelligence in everything, even in things that seem unintelligent, incoherent, or nothing more than random formless matter. The world and all things in it moves towards something, in more or less efficient degrees, but always intelligent. That is, there seems to be an intelligence in systems, processes, agents, and actors. Not just human beings themselves, but also groups of humans, animals, plants, and even things such as viruses, funguses, or mold. These are brainless entities that still follow an intelligible pattern. According to Aquinas, all natural things and bodies have an end, and seek to achieve that end, in one way or another. The summation and overlying ultimate intelligence that directs all beings to that end and gives them their end is, according to Aquinas, what we call God. Then, I would like to summarize these 5 ways in one short phrase per argument. Number 1. God exists because change and motion exist, and potential can only become actual through something already actual. It therefore requires an unmoved actual mover. 2. God exists because every effect has an efficient cause, and nothing can cause itself, so there must be a first efficient cause. 3. God exists because not everything can fail to exist. There must be a being that cannot not exist, for there to be any existence at all. God is existence itself. 4. God exists because things are more or less good, true, noble, or according to any other ideal, and these gradations require a perfect maximum on which they are dependent. 5. God exists because the causal order and regularity in nature show guidance by a supreme intelligence. If you liked this video, please give a like down below as well, and let me know your thoughts. If you'd like to see more, please also subscribe to my channel. Thank you for now.